Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the MLB DFS Core Pick Video Core Pick live stream for today, August 31st. It's the last day of August. It's a 3-game main slate in total today. At this point in time, my camera is not up and working for whatever reason once again. So I do apologize for that. But since we didn't have video yesterday, we're not going to be going over a recap. If you guys have any questions in terms of MLB DFS for the 3-game main slate for today, drop them down in the live chat if you're watching live. Drop them down in the comments if you are watching on replay, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. So we're just going to get into the weather report first and foremost. Then we'll get over to the core picks that I do have for today. And last but not least, the cheat sheet and my top GPP teams to stack overall. If you're interested in more in-depth notes in terms of hitter versus pitcher, pitchers, whether I would consider them in play, risky play, or straight up avoid, definitely be sure to check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/Coach Craig Sports. Small monthly donation there. You get information Monday through Friday typically. This week, nothing for Wednesday, nothing for Friday. Got a couple other things going on with my business that I'm working on starting up. So do apologize for that, but we'll be back again Monday through Friday next week. So at this point in time, going to that weather report. So we're over on RotoWire at this point in time. Doesn't look like anything majorly weather-wise for the games for today. There is the one early game today, the Tigers and the Yankees, 0% chance of rain there if you're interested in playing that single game slate for whatever reason. And then we have Washington and Miami. And Washington, only 1% chance of rain. San Diego and San Francisco. On San Diego, only 0% chance of rain. And then in Los Angeles, 0% chance of rain for the Dodgers and the Braves. So nothing too major weather-wise here today. So that's a good thing for a 3-game main slate. If you get, like 1 or 2 games that get rained out, makes for a pretty ugly slate on these smaller slates just in general. But looks pretty good weather-wise. If anything does majorly change throughout the day, we'll leave it down in the comments, as well as the starting lineups as they do come out throughout the day. But with that being said, we're going to stop sharing this screen. We'll get over to FanDuel and talk about the core picks that I do have for today overall. So let me get this brought up here. If you are joining me for the first time, it will be 1 pitcher, 4 hitters, combination of past history plus recent history as well. So, at the pitcher position today, we only got 6 pitchers that are going to be available. I think there's 3 that I would be mainly looking at. Spencer Strider, I expect to have a ton of ownership. So if you're playing in GPPs, that's kind of why I went over to Braxton Garrett here, who is $8,700. Probably ultimately going to be the second or third most owned pitcher. He's going against the Washington Nationals today, $8,700. Like I said, averaging just under 27 fantasy points per game. It's been a decent season for him so far. ERA is just under 4, 7 wins in total. And then we got his history versus the Washington Nationals. So pretty limited history here at that versus their hitters. A little bit of hit or miss there, but he's got 22 and 49 points versus them in 2023. In 2022, he had 43 and 35 fantasy point performances for them. So if you're looking for a little bit different pay down option today and looking not to play Spencer Strider, look at Braxton Garrett today. Just in general, I think I'm going to have him, Spencer Strider, Lanson for the most part. Probably not getting to the other 3 guys, but if you want to go there, go out on a limb. Definitely a way to get different in GPPs overall for today. But we're going to get off of him. We'll go down to the hitters. So I think there's a lot of different options for hitting this way today. If you're interested in kind of the notes, the hitter versus pitcher matchups, be sure to check that out over on Patreon. Not a long list of history for a lot of the stuff today, though. But at second base, we have Luis Ariz. He's $2,900. Averaging just over 9 fantasy points per game on the season. The .349 batting average, 5 home runs, 58 RBIs. If you look at what he's done lately, he has at least 1 hit in 7 out of his last 8 games. So some pretty solid, safe performances there. He's not a guy that gives you a ton of upside because he doesn't hit for a lot of power, doesn't hit for a lot of, or doesn't run for a lot of speed, steal bases, stuff like that. But, if he gets on a couple multi-hit games, scores a run or 2, could be a guy that ultimately ends up paying off there in a good matchup versus Yohin Adon, who he is 1 for 3 versus in his career. And then, since we're kind of talking about the Marlins, I'm just going to jump down to my outfielder and Jazz Chisholm, who is $3,000. He's 2 for 8 with 1 home run versus Adon in his career. 244 average on the season, 13 home runs, 31 RBIs, 10 fantasy points per game at $3,000. A guy that does give you some of that power upside, a guy that does give you some of that stolen base upside as opposed to Luis Ariz, his teammate. Going to be a pretty interesting option today. There's not a lot of guys kind of in that middle of the pack in the outfield today in terms of pricing. So definitely think he stands out from that regard. He does have at least 1 hit in 5 out of his last 7 games. So he's been doing pretty good since he's been back. So not too much that we can complain about there. Looks like a pretty good matchup versus Adon for the Nationals today. And then we're going to go over to our two Padres in here. So there's kind of mini stacks building here at this point in time. We have Manny Machado at $3,400. He is 5 for 12 versus Sean Manaea, who is the expected primary pitcher, starting pitcher for the Giants today. We'll see if that changes throughout the day. If it does, I'll leave a major note down below and kind of update from there. But at this point in time, looks like he should get the start. A lot of times they've been using an opener ahead of him. So we'll just keep an eye out on that. But Manny Machado, like I said, 5 for 12 versus Manaea in his career. About a 250 batting average and 25 home runs, 78 RBIs on the season, averaging just under 11 fantasy points per game. He's $3,400. And if you look at what he's kind of done lately for Manny Machado, it's a 7-game hitting streak. So some pretty decent upside there at the same time. And then last but not least, we're going to his teammate Xander Bogaerts. 259 average, 15 home runs, 45 RBIs, averaging just over 9 fantasy points per game. $2,800, and a guy that has really good history in the past versus Sean Manaea. He is 6 for 12 with 1 home run, and he has at least 1 hit in 4 out of his last 5 games. So some pretty decent upside to be had there at $2,800. Looks like a pretty decent option on today's slate overall, but that's kind of what I have in terms of the core 5 picks. If you ultimately go with these 5 players, you have $14,200 remaining, just over $3,500 per player. So a little bit of room to pay up if that's something you really want to do. Ronald Acuna is out there if you want to go with him. He does have a home run in his career versus Lance Lynn. But if you want to go pay up for Spencer Strider, you have the ability to do that as well. But just keep in mind the ownership is going to be heavily weighted towards him. So if he does ultimately have a bad performance, probably not going to kill you, but you're going to have to get your hitters right. But if he has a bad performance and you jump on another pitcher that has a good performance, that's a different way to stand out in GPPs. But, if you're playing in like a cash game, Spencer Strider is going to make more sense. If you're playing in GPPs, probably getting to somebody a little bit different, and hopefully it pays off in that regard, but still getting to some ownership of Spencer Strider at the same time. But with that being said, we're going to stop sharing this screen. We are going to get over to that cheat sheet and the top GPP teams to stack for today overall. So I'm going to get that brought up here. I did list 4 here today, but it's kind of like the main 2 are going to be the Padres and the Giants, then probably the Marlins, then probably the Braves. So we'll start off with the Marlins. Going against Adon, it looks like a pretty decent matchup. Don't mind playing them. Like I said, Luis Ariz, Jazz Chisholm in the line or in the core picks today. Jesus Sanchez has some decent history versus him. I'm trying to remember who else there was. There's Nick Fortes, the catcher. If he ultimately ends up starting, he is 2 for 4 with 1 home run versus Adon. So could be a little interesting pay down option there. Probably a little bit more relevant on the DraftKings side where you do have to play a catcher, but primarily focused on FanDuel for MLB DFS. And then moving over to the Padres, a lot of these guys have really good history versus Sean Manaea in the past, whether it's Garrett Cooper, whether it is Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, those 2 both obviously in the core picks. And then Trent Grisham also is 3 for 5 versus him in his career, but it's a tougher lefty on lefty matchup. That's ultimately why he didn't make my cheat sheet, and he hasn't been doing the best as of late. But, a little bit different way to get there if he ultimately ends up starting for the Padres. And then the Giants, they're going against Pedro Avila. Not really history there in the past. So if you want to mix and match some Giants hitters in there, it does make some sense. JD Davis is pretty cheap. Jock Peterson's pretty cheap. A lot of different cheap options from that team overall. And then last but not least, we have the Atlanta Braves. They're going against Lance Lynn. Not a long list of history there. Ronald Acuna does have a home run versus him in the past. Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley, kind of like 1 for 2, 1 for 3 versus him. So a lot of different options to get there. I believe Eddie Rosario is 1 for 2 versus him as well. A lot of different ways that you could approach this slate overall. Kind of mix and match, see what works best for you. 3-game main slate, I typically tend to play less in terms of money wise and everything else like that, just due to the nature of the variance. A little bit less there, more likely to tie, even if you do ultimately end up coming on top for the day. But if you have any additional questions related to MLB DFS, be sure to drop them down in the comments and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. As always, if anything majorly changes with the weather, we'll leave that down there, as well as the starting lineups as they do come out throughout the afternoon and evening. So definitely be sure to check that out, especially as we get closer to the lock. But with that being said, that's pretty much what I do have in terms of the MLB DFS core picks, the weather report and the GPP stacks for today. Also very interested in who your favorite play is for today's slate. Could be someone from my core 5 picks. Could be someone from my top GPP stacks. Probably is, since it's only a 3-game main slate. But if it is somebody different, be sure to let me know as well. Definitely interested in hearing what you guys have to say. And then with that being said, if you are brand new to my channel, checking out for the very first time, or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, we got Monday through Friday, MLB DFS, CFL DFS once a week, typically on Wednesdays. This week's will be later today, probably around like 6 o'clock Central Time, if I had to guess. 6:30 Central Time, probably closer to 6 though. Just after practice, want to get all the news updates in terms of injury wise for that and everything else like that. That's what we're on the DraftKings side. And then as we move into the NFL regular season, we'll be doing some NFL DFS content, maybe a couple fantasy football videos here and there. And then also be sure to check out my college football show. Coach Goes Back to College over on the Sports Affiliation channel. Definitely be sure to subscribe to them. Be sure to subscribe to my channel as well. That's where I will be going over Prospector 2 every week, my personal game of the week, and then kind of my favorite prop of the week too, mainly based on Prize Picks, sometimes on Parlay Play as well. Definitely be sure to check out both sites as well as BetUS. I have some codes down in the description below if that's something you're interested in. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have at this point in time. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you that is tuning in, whether you're watching live or on replay. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in MLB DFS tonight.